When I first played Apex Legends, I was shocked at how well thought out and polished everything was, except it wasn't. We all later learned along the way that the game was plagued with bugs, and it almost seemed like each new patch would bring a new bunch of bugs. Thankfully, a lot of these bugs and glitches have actually been a lot of fun, and some of my best memories in Apex Legends have been from using bugs. Let's take a look at them. I'll try to showcase as much as my own footage as possible, but in areas where that's not possible, I'll make it very clear whose footage it belongs to. First up, we have supply bin jumping. I don't know how this was in the game, and more importantly, I don't know how anybody found it, but essentially you could boost yourself really high into the air by repeatedly punching a supply bin. The more punches you gave it, the more stored up power it would build, and if you then stood on the supply bin and jumped, you'd be sent flying across the map at incredible speeds. Who knows how this bug was found, but once it was, everybody was trying it. It was absolutely ridiculous. With very little tactical benefit and lots of preparation, it was rarely abused by players, but it was more something to shock your unaware friends with. Next, we have the sticky Gibraltar gun shield bug. So I guess since the start of Apex Legends, Gibraltar's gun shield acted like any other piece of terrain. That meant you could throw arc stars on it and they'd stick to him, and if you turned off the shield, the arc star would disappear. However, this was taken a lot further, because you could also throw gas traps on Gibraltar's gun shield and turn him into a giant walking tower of toxic traps. Unfortunately, you had to stay aiming down sights, so you couldn't really move that fast. But if you put an Octane jump pad on the ground, things changed. You could look at the ground as Gibraltar and bounce yourself into the air. With this strange glitch, you could essentially turn yourself into a bouncing Gibraltar. Of course, this one was pretty big, so it got patched quite quick, but whilst it was in the game, I had some of the most fun I've ever had in Apex Legends. And ever since it has been fixed, as a result of the way they fixed it, Gibraltar's gun shield can now deflect arc stars, a nice little buff for an underpowered legend at the time. For the next bug, we have something that happened very recently, and it was absolutely massive. You could glitch Underworld's edge and walk under the map. People were hiding under the map and walking all of the way into the ring and abusing that to get free RP and free wins, essentially. It was removed pretty quickly, thankfully. I never came across anybody using it in my games, but I definitely saw a bunch of videos about it online. Next up, let's talk about balloon jumping. This was perhaps the biggest and most abusable glitch in Apex Legends at the start of the game, and it only lasted a very short time before it was patched. This glitch allowed you to essentially prolong the time you were in the air after using the redeployed balloons, so it let you travel across the map much faster. It made it so much easier to hunt down kills and go for high kill games, because normally when you play, it's really hard to actually get to players quick enough. You essentially had to reboost off of the terrain, and that would let you continue the flying animation for longer. With some practice, you could do it all throughout the map. Next up isn't so much of a glitch, but more of a big oversight from the development team, and it was in the game for a long time. Essentially, collision was still on for players during the initial dropship phase. What this meant is that if you collided with another team in mid-air, you'd slow down, and this could cause you to lose out on landing first. If enough people left the dropship at the same time, for example, right as the dropship was above a hot drop area like Skulltown, RIP Skulltown by the way, they'd all get stuck together and you'd all kind of just be floating in the air in this big mess of players. Next, we have a pretty game-breaking glitch that allowed players to shoot whilst they were downed. There seemed to be many ways to trigger it. For example, if you got downed just as you finished using an item or changed to a different state, like going invisible, you'd be able to shoot whilst downed. Yep, pretty game-breaking when everybody else is expecting downed players to do nothing but wiggle back and forth. This was another bug that was in the game for a very long time, but it was very hard to recreate effectively, and considering you had to time an item use just as you went down, it didn't get abused that much, so I guess it must have gone under the radar in terms of bug fixing priority. For the next bug, we have the recent Duos Punch glitch. So essentially, players were able to punch each other as they were in the loading screen. If you got 4 punches on a player before you moved on to the actual game, you'd knock them down and they'd start the game as a downed player, and if they left the ship, they'd plummet to the ground. This happened because when you are loading into the game, all players are spawned together in an area, and for World's Edge, they all start loading in near Sorting Factory. This is why you sometimes hear coughing or other noises. It's legends making idle noises noises as they're standing there. After the duos update, there must have been a change to how the players were positioned, and they were put close enough together that it was possible to punch each other. Next, we have the Peacekeeper double pump. You could shoot the Peacekeeper, put it back in your inventory, and then get it back out again and shoot. It wasn't technically a glitch, but more of a workaround of how the inventory system worked. Eventually, it did get patched out because it was very, very strong, and it took the Peacekeeper to another level. Players got really good at switching out and doing double shots of the Peacekeeper. Now, imagine how ridiculous the game would be if the current buffed Peacekeeper could be double pumped like this. Thankfully, it hasn't been in the game for a long time. Next up, we have all the CodeNet and CodeLeaf errors that have plagued the game. I mean, it's happened to everybody. There are some kind of server and matchmaking issues that are still ongoing, and Respawn hasn't quite ironed them all out. It has gotten a lot better since Season 2, where it was seriously bad. It happens a lot less now, thankfully, but it still happens occasionally. This is one of those glitches that really does just suck. I mean, it's like the opposite end of the spectrum in comparison to supply bin jumping. It just ruins the fun for everybody, so I'm glad it is slowly being fixed and removed from the game. Next, we have an ongoing glitch in Season 3 that happens rarely, but when it happens, it's completely game breaking. Sometimes you'll ready up, you'll find your game, choose your legends, but the entire map is missing. You'll all land on an invisible wall and have to punch your way to victory as strange tearing issues are thrown all across your screen. It's absolute carnage when it happens. It has yet to happen to me yet, but some people have had it happen in ranked, which is pretty brutal, unless you're lucky enough to punch your way to victory, I guess. I have a feeling Caustic could do pretty well in this game mode. So next we're going to look at an ability glitch from Wraith. Now, there were a lot of glitches that allowed you to kind of reuse your abilities, but in my opinion this was the best one. Essentially, whilst playing as Wraith, if you climbed over a small ledge and used your tactical whilst in your ultimate form, you could reuse your ultimate, and then you could place multiple portals down. Technically, there was no limit to the amount of portals if you were getting good at it, but they did kind of disappear after a while, so the timer was an element in there. It didn't really provide any tactical benefit, and it was absolutely crazy when you pulled it off and you just saw people being bewildered by how many portals were placed down. That did get patched pretty quickly after it became very common knowledge, but once again, this is another glitch that was in the game, hidden for a very long time, and many people didn't know it was there. Finally, we have a super rare glitch that lets you play as Octane, but you're given Mirage's abilities, and when you throw out your Bamboozle, it's an Octane Bamboozle. This must be the most mind-boggling thing to come across. Imagine being bamboozled by an Octane decoy. It seems like it's very rare, and we have very little footage of it happening, and I have no clue how it even ended up in the game, but it is there. I kind of like the fact that it's so rare, because if it did happen to a player, they're going to be even more shocked because nobody really knows about this glitch. It seems that one thing is common with all of these glitches in the game. There's this sort of lifespan for a glitch. First, it's kind of unknown, undiscovered, and then people start to learn about it. I guess it spreads on Reddit through word of mouth, and then suddenly everybody knows about it, and then Respawn realizes and they patch it. Whether or not you agree with glitches, it's best that if you find one, you show it on social media and let everybody know it exists. That way it can get removed quicker. If you keep it secret or think that it's best not to share with the world, then it's gonna stay unknown for longer, and the chances of it getting fixed are going to be less likely. We saw this with the supply bin glitch and the Gibraltar gun shield glitch. Those two glitches were in the game since the very beginning, but nobody fixed it until it became a super viral hit in the game. Either way, I feel like these little glitches have kind of added some strange value, especially during the period where there wasn't any content in the game. We kind of had to rely on these glitches for a bit of fun, at least I did. So that's it, all of the most ridiculous glitches and bugs in Apex Legends history. If you like this video, let me know. I had a lot of fun making it. I know this kind of more light-hearted content seems to do really well on this channel, which I was quite surprised about. Before, I did a top rarest skins and a top badges video. If you have any other ideas for this style of video, let me know. I would love to hear your feedback. Alright, thanks again for watching. If you want to see more from me, you can follow me on Twitch to watch my live streams or follow my gameplay channel. Links for both of those will be in the description. Thanks again. I'll see you in the comments. Cheerio!